Welcome to That's Canon, a podcast talking about the Canon film series and other similar movies. This is episode 27. I'm your host, Phil,
And I'm Greg.
and we've made it 25 movies,
Woo!
27 episodes.
Yes, so that's our first episode, our intro. 25 movies, one Christmas special,
Yes.
and this 25 movie roundup.
You know what? I sometimes forget that we did the Christmas special. I don't know why either, because Santa Claus Conquers the Martian was such
Garbage.
a garbage movie.
Yeah, it was pretty forgettable. I actually, when I was going back through our list, just to kind of brush up a little bit on everything, building our top five, I noticed that it's like the way that it works in my folder structure on my computer is it goes right to the bottom because it doesn't have a number. It's got like a special number. So I even forget about it just looking at my list. It's like, oh yeah. And I realized it was just such a forgettable movie. I kind of regret that we didn't do something more memorable for the Christmas special, but
I know.
live and learn.
I think, well, you know, thinking about, I like special episodes, right? We
Yeah.
should do one for maybe like 4th of July or something like that. Find a good cheesy 4th of July movie.
I'm sure. Yeah, we've talked about that before, doing more. There's a slasher for every obscure holiday you can think of.
Yes.
We got to find one.
Oh, beautiful. But yeah, we've made it, right? We've
We
we
lasted.
watched we watched roughly 25 canon films, varying degrees of all kinds. Some I would say would make my regular routine of watching movies. Some I would
Sure.
I would very well like to put back in and rewatch, and others are just distant memories.
Yeah, honestly, that was, as I was going through building the top five, that was where I started. Was I looked at the whole list of everything we've done, right? And okay, I need to start weeding some of these out. And the first thing I did was just I passed them through a do I remember it at all filter. And like half of our catalog went right out the door with that because I realized, I had to look at the list to remember that we even watched it. And the fact that I had to do that means it's not in my top five. So there are
Th-
quite a few of those.
and isn't that surprising that there's some movies we watched, we sat down, we basically went over the entire movie again,
With a fine tooth comb
and
for like 2 hours,
yeah, and
and
we
we
still
still,
don't remember it.
it's, yeah, there's limited real estate in these brains of ours, and we are not about to let it get, you know, taken up by the likes of, I don't know, New Year's Evil or
Oh man,
Schizoid.
New Year's Evil. Every once in a while, I I look at the photo of the guy in the mask for New Year's Evil.
Oh yeah,
That
the
creepy
Nixon mask, I think,
yeah.
right?
Oh man.
Uh,
Eh,
I hope
eh,
that wasn't in your top five.
oh, it definitely wasn't. It did not make the top list. There
Okay,
was
good.
some movies like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hype that in the moment we definitely hated it. And I am not going to sit here and start forgiving this movie for how horrible it is, but there are lines from the movie that it provided us or now just
Oh
like
yeah.
callbacks.
Yeah, and honestly, that's at that. So I mean, we could probably start going through honorable mentions maybe because that's at the top of my honorable mentions list where it was not a good movie, but it provided us so much fodder for later episodes. We constantly refer back to that movie, and you
Yes.
have to give credit where credit's due there. It was so terrible in such a unique way that we constantly use it as a basis for comparison.
I just find it, I think it was one of the first Dick Miller appearances that we
Woohoo!
have, and just some of the obscure oddities that movie
Yep.
had.
The
I mean,
weird tickle doctor.
yes.
Ugh.
Uh a fat bottom, right? What was the nurses' names? There was like pretty bottom and
Oh
stuff like
yeah,
that.
all of the overweight women who became thin and had sexually suggestive names.
And
Yeah.
now, we look back and any time that we see, oh shit, Oliver Reed in a movie or like, because that's happened. We watched Dr. Heckle and Mr. Hype, and then a
Mhm.
couple weeks later I watched an Oliver Reed film and I'm like, oh my god, It's
It's
him.
it's the animate lump of clay.
Yeah. And it's just one of those things where it brings a smile on my face, and not a lot of people would get Dr. Heckle and Mr. Hype references. It's a deep, deep cut.
It's a deep, deep reference. So deep, it's in a black hole where it belongs.
Yes. I mean, okay, so you got a couple honorable mentions before we get into our top five. Why don't you go ahead and list a couple of them off there?
Yeah, sure. So the first one, yeah, obviously is Dr. Heckle and Mr. Hype. We talked about that one. We talk about it all the time. It's got to
Yes.
be on there. It's clearly not one of the top five. I could never, in good conscience, put it there, but because of the material that it gives us as podcasters, I have to give it credit. Um, the Apple I put in my honorable mentions specifically because it lives up to the kind of hype that it has about being one of the worst quote unquote movies ever made. And plus, it's just unique amongst the things that we've watched. It's a dystopian
Dystopian
religious themes
musical.
musical, right? I mean, what the hell is up with that? You don't watch a lot of crap like that, no
No,
matter
you
what.
don't.
So gotta credit where credit's due there. I have Death Wish in my honorable mentions, and
Nice.
not because it's. I mean, obviously, it's clearly one of the better movies of the ones that we've watched so far, but it's not a canon movie, so I can't put it in my top five. Um, but I figured we got to save the actual canon movies for the top five.
Oh
But
man, now you got me thinking, like, are all my top fives actual factual canon? Oh no. Well, we'll
I
get to my list when we
yeah,
get there.
we'll get there. It's I honestly don't remember. I'm sure there are more, and other similar movies that we've watched. Hopefully, I don't think I have any in mind, but we'll see. But anyway, yeah, I mean, Death Wish was great. It was the first Charles Bronson movie that I had ever seen. It lives up to its reputation. It's kind of gritty and shocking, and but not in an annoying way. Yeah, it was a memorable watch, and plus, I mean, it had Jeff Goldblum as one of the horrible home invaders in the beginning,
Yes.
so you got to love that.
Uh,
Oh,
I
go ahead.
think the only honorable mention beyond the ones that you said, the only one that I would throw in there from my perspective would be the Happy Hooker Goes to Hollywood. Uh,
Ah, yes.
I think just because it was one of the only films that I've seen Adam West in. He's Batman, right?
I
Beyond
forgot
that,
he's in that. Yeah.
I figured he had no real career, but the Happy Hooker Goes to Hollywood. I look back fondly at it, at the absurdity,
Yeah.
and the comedy was sometimes surprisingly good. But yeah, you got full Adam West ass in that one.
I forget. Yeah, I say I forgot about those awkward sex scenes we had with Adam West in that
Yeah.
one. Hearing him making like groaning noises, which I'm not going to try to recreate here.
Oh
Yeah,
man.
yeah,
Yeah,
I can see that. It was of the we watched a couple kind of quote unquote boner comedies. And I
I
think that was
love that
probably one of the
word.
better ones.
I should go back and go through all the episodes to find every time you've said boner comedy and just string them out with each other.
Boner,
Boner
boner,
comedy.
boner, boner comedy. You're welcome, everyone. And I'm
Uh,
sorry.
oh man. Yeah, I think were you when we sat down and we originally started doing this, I think we had an idea of what canon is and what
Hmm.
we expected from it, right?
Hmm.
Do you think we're there? Do you think that we're at that moment now?
I I'm glad you brought that up because that was kind of the main thing that I wanted to bring up from that perspective was, where we are in terms of the canonness of the movies we watched. I I don't think we're quite there yet. Because what I realized going through the list is even though, we have our favorites, obviously, of these, only one or two are really sort of known as good, funny, bad canon movies, right?
Uh-huh.
I don't think we're at a point in our history because we're still in what, like the early to mid 80s, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I think I think we've got a couple years to go before we start seeing more of those kind of really well-known cult classics that canon is known for, like the some of the I can never remember what is his name? I always forget it. Texas Ranger. Chuck
Oh,
Norris.
Chuck Norris. I almost said
Yes.
Walker, Texas.
Walker Texas. No, like where we get to all his like those kind of goofy action movies. We get to some of the Death Wish, the other Death Wish sequels. We haven't watched Breakin' or Breakin' 2 yet. I feel like,
Soon.
yeah, very soon. I just don't think we're quite there yet. I think maybe of the ones that we've watched, like Enter the Ninja, maybe is the only one that's got a reputation so far
Yeah, I
that
think the
people
two
would know.
ninja movies, right? Enter the Ninja and Enter the Ninja 2.
Yeah.
Beyond that, like other films like Joe, it's surprisingly you don't hear them spoke or talk about when they bring up canon, right?
Hmm.
And I think when we originally reviewed Joe, we were very surprised by how people don't talk about that movie, how
Yeah.
it's kind of been, I won't say the word lost, but maybe forgotten about.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely forgotten about. I think a lot of the ones, probably all, I think all the ones in my top five, with what exception of one, are in that kind of category where wow, this is surprisingly good, but it didn't have that sort of canon cult classic reputation, so we just hadn't heard about it, and they've like you said, they kind of gotten forgotten about, unfortunately.
Well, you know what? Let's start talking about some of our top 5 favorite
Yes,
films that we've watched here. I'm wondering how similar ours is going to be, but
I'm very curious.
let
Yeah, go ahead. Number
let's go
five
ahead.
first.
Number 5. You go ahead. You do yours first. You do number 5 first.
Okay, so my number five is Alien Contamination
Oh man, Alien
from 1982.
Contamination.
I struggled with my number five slot, but I had to give it to Alien Contamination because I'm just a sucker for sci-fi horror, even if it's bad. And this one is bad. I just have a soft spot for it because all my favorite movies, legitimately good favorite movies, are all sci-fi horror, like Alien and The Thing. And I like the genre so much that I can really I have an appreciation for it. So I was actually just listening to Alien Contamination, our episode on that, re-listening to it not that long ago, and I've got nothing but good memories of it, and I just remember all the horrible costumes and the soundtrack by Goblin. Um,
That one always still surprises me that Goblin
right?
is the person like that's the group that did the soundtrack.
Yeah, it's this legend of Italian movie soundtracks, like of Suspiria fame, no less. It just astounds me that they did the soundtrack for Alien Contamination. But yeah, and the part that really clinched this as a number five for me was when you and I were talking in that episode about early on in the movie where they're like learning about what the eggs are, and they do all these experiments, and they did that one experiment where they exploded a rat
Yes.
with the alien slime for no reason other than to see the rat explode. It's just,
It's
it's
such an
just
absurd moment, right?
it really is, and that's what the part I love about this movie is because there's so much nonsensical crap, especially when they do try that like the sciencey angles. It just makes no. They just make such stupid decisions at every turn, and I love it.
It's 100% like the screenwriter going down and putting on paper, this sounds like science.
Yep,
Zombie 3, oh, put those two
a perfect
molecules
example.
together. Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that looks good. Like
It's
it sounds the words you're saying are scientific, but you don't sound smart saying them.
No, it's like using a word that exists in the wrong sentence. This
Yeah.
movie is filled with that kind of stuff, and it's so much fun to watch and to talk about. Um, yeah, and honestly, I think the last thing I want to mention here is just we talked about the plot, kind of the plot points, and how it's sort of an alien ripoff, but not really. They did some unique things. I've got to give credit to this movie for coming up with the idea for an alien queen that lays eggs, and B, the idea that there's a telepathic link between the like queen alien and the drones.
Yeah.
They came up with that crap before Aliens.
That's the insane part.
It's insane, isn't it? I'm astounded. I did not remember that until I re-listened to the episode, but that was just a crazy little factoid that I had to put in there because it was just so surprising.
it just goes to show you that, someone can make something that's bad, but still have good ideas in it.
Yeah,
They
very.
will probably think of it from like the perspective of insects, right? Kind of like how
Mm-hmm.
James Cameron eventually did.
Yeah.
These things, they all listen to the mother, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of a unique thing that I'm surprised. Yeah, I'm surprised that this came up with it first. I mean, who knows? Maybe that idea was kicking around in James Cameron's head around this time. Who knows? But
James Cameron sat down, watched alien contamination, and
oh
went,
shit.
"Damn, that's a good idea."
I
Because
like I like the idea that he had the idea, then watched the movie and started to get nervous.
he's like, "I got to make sure this is this is amazing."
Oh man, I got to do better than contamination.
Uh, well, my number five is a little movie called Enter the Ninja.
Enter the Ninja.
1981 Franco Nero. I got to say, even though I think we kind of ripped this one apart, there were
We did.
so many insane moments in this movie that I felt it's that early encapsulation of what canon is, which
Yep.
is just like ninjas are popular, Franco Nero is kind of known. Boom,
Kind
that's
of a
what we
name.
got, right?
Yep. Just try to smash all these things. It feels very focus grouped almost,
Oh yeah.
right?
And I think there's a couple parts in it that definitely still I think about. I'm like when about to go to sleep, I can still hear it in my head, which is Pee Wee coming up and going, "Anybody want a cockfight?" Oh yeah, and they just throw chickens around.
Yeah,
The-
no, they've got chickens in their back pocket for any impromptu cockfight.
and this one definitely had like some really great moments in it. The hook, at the end when Franco Nero is like, he's like, "I don't kill people." Well, I guess I can make an exception. And you're just kind of going like, "Holy shit! I can't believe all of this like insanity." Right?
Yeah, so this is actually my number four. So I'm
Oh
glad I'm
wow.
glad we're talking about it. Yeah, everything you said is totally correct. I think we mentioned it earlier that this was, I think, the first really kind of canon movie. And I think maybe that's because we tend to associate canon more with like B action movies.
Yeah.
But I mean, the part in the beginning where he like cuts that guy's head off, and it turns out it was just a dummy the whole time, and it was
Yeah.
all a test.
Oh my god.
It's
Yeah.
just, yeah, it's such a great blend of funny and bad, but weird, and some kind of genuinely good martial arts action scenes. Um,
Yeah, that first 10 minutes, and
oh, it was
especially
great.
that intro where over the credits, it shows the guy using all the ninja weapons and it looks cool.
Oh
And
yeah.
and even that first 10 minutes, it's totally silent. And the action is, fairly decent, if not a
Yeah.
little insane. And then it just ends with like, it's a dummy. Congratulations, white guy. You're a
You're a
ninja.
ninja now. Here's your ninja diploma. It's yeah, I've got great memories of that from like a B. It's a great B action movie. And I think that was the first one that we watched, wasn't it?
I think one of the first canon films, yeah, like one of the first when you get into the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, no, that it was The Godsend was our first one. That is like the first canon production, the first Golan Globus. Is that how you say that guy's name? Because I've been saying Globus
Globus? I
for
have no idea.
27 episodes. He's Globus. The first canon
Mm,
group is The Happy Hooker Goes to Hollywood.
okay. So I guess I was thinking maybe more it was the first action
It was
canon
definitely our
movie.
first action
Yeah.
canon film.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's just, yeah, there's so many memorable things about it. I think the thing that put it at number 4 for me was the characters. And you mentioned probably my favorite character, Pee-wee, the
We
farmhand, who is who become like he's not characterized at all, but he has all these funny lines, and he's just kind of I don't know, you relate to him in some way so that when he's being threatened later in the movie, I just remember being really angry when people were like beating up when the bad guys henchmen were beating up on Pee-wee.
Yes.
I just remember being irrationally upset about that. But there's so many good characters. I mean, the alcoholic war buddy,
Yeah.
uh,
He said
that
that he's like, he's essentially like, I can't get my dick up anymore.
oh, erectile dysfunction is funny. It's yeah, it's him and the street merchant who kind of helps him out later on.
Dollars. Yeah.
Dollars, yes. I couldn't remember his name. I didn't want to look it up because I felt like that was cheating. But I remember him. I remember that character. He had like all the kind of knickknacks in his coat. Um, remember the research assistant, like the bad guy's right hand man, who
Yes. Oh my
he
God.
went to the library and did research on ninjas.
He was so good. He was the ideal second in charge.
Oh yeah, really really capable and well researched. He took notes and it was super sassy.
Yes.
Yeah, no, great pick for your number five. And yeah, it's easily in my. That was an easy choice in my top five also.
Yeah, I think also that, and we referenced this in when we reviewed the Enter the Ninja 2, the scene between the wife and husband and the action is happening behind them.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
For a canon film, that was really good.
Yeah, because
Uh
that's when the black ninja comes. They hire him from Japan,
yes.
and he comes in to kind of assassinate everyone. He's kind of sneaking around in the back and running on the roofs, and yeah, man, that was good.
Now I know usually you're in charge of quotes, but my favorite Enter the Ninja quote or moment,
Ooh,
because sometimes some of these movies just have moments, not quotes,
they do.
is Venarius going, I want my black ninja and I want him now.
He's like a child.
Yeah.
He's like Veruca Salt in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
But daddy, I want a black ninja.
I want a black ninja now.
Okay, man, that's great. So your number four was Enter the Ninja, I guess. Okay, so my number
Yeah.
four is 10 to Midnight.
Oh man.
Is that your number three?
That is my number three.
Oh my God. We're off because of alien contamination.
Yeah, that kind of that clinched alien contamination on number five put us all out of whack. But no, yeah, continue. Sorry. 10 to Midnight, great pick.
What? Yeah, what a movie. Why does no one
Hmm.
talk about 10 to Midnight?
Yeah, this was the first. My whole top three are all those movies that I'm genuinely surprised that I haven't heard about before and don't see people talk about. Because it
Yeah,
was my favorite of the three Charles Bronson movies that we've watched so far.
hands down the
Hmm.
best. Charles Bronson was, while he was Charles Bronson in the film, he was almost relatable in Death Wish and
Yeah,
especially in Death Wish 2. He's just like a killing machine, right? As we kind of referenced multiple times in Death Wish 2, he gets into
yeah.
his Death Wish costume, right?
The black turtleneck and the trench coat.
Yeah. So like we know when he's about to kill someone, but in 10 to Midnight, he's a cop who wants to do the best thing possible, but does it in the wrong way,
Yeah,
right?
definitely more real. I think definitely more realistic, more relatable because he behaves more like how a normal person would behave in real life. Like you said, he's a talented detective, but he's frustrated with the system and makes some bad choices along the way because he wants to put this murderer away, but doesn't have the evidence to do it.
And plus the murderer.
Yes.
What a character,
Oh,
right?
easily. I mean, we've watched how many slasher movies, and the killer in this one is easily the best of all of
Yeah.
them.
Gene, I gotta say, his his motivation, like the fact that he strips down and gets naked to do his murders, the
Hmm.
subtle homosexuality, maybe sexual frustration that he has with
Repression.
his sexual identity,
Hmm.
these these minute layers of detail
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
amazing.
Definitely a very believable. I mean, we're all kind of steeped in true crime stories these days, it feels like. And like knowing what we know about real serial killers, he's a very well written serial killer because
Yeah.
he's just like the serial killers that we hear about in real life. And yeah, like I wrote that same thing down. The fact that he's very meticulous and that he thinks to remove his clothes before killing someone just to not get blood on him. And remember that part in the beginning where he goes to the movies and talks to the, kind of harasses those two women, and we think
Yes.
he's just being a dick, but he's doing that specifically to establish an alibi.
Yeah.
Genius in a sick and kind of haunting way, but way more intelligent than any of the killers in the other movies that we've seen.
It was such a treat to watch the movie, and because I go back and when I edit it and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
um I also thought it was funny that we both thought at one moment that Gina Davis was going to be in this movie, because the guy who plays the killer is named Gene Davis.
Yeah.
And then I think it was like
Gina
halfway
Davis.
through the episode, we were both like, and then we realized that Gina Davis wasn't showing up.
Guys, I don't think Gina Davis is coming.
But even
Oh,
the end
yeah.
for the film, when it ends in the foot chase between um, Warren and
Oh, that's right.
Charles Bronson's daughter in the film, it was so well shot and so well done. And that final confrontation between Charles Bronson and Warren was so fantastic.
Yeah, yeah. Because that's like, I mean, the whole premise of that was he doesn't have the evidence to put him away. And I think he plants some on him and then he escapes, and that's when he goes after the daughter, right?
Yes.
And Charles Bronson realizes at that last moment that he still doesn't have the evidence that he's gonna go free. And he makes that choice to shoot him.
Oh, it's so good too, because he's even like, I'll just get out and I'll find you later.
Yep.
You're
I'll
not
get out
going to
on
stop
parole.
me. And then
Yep.
he just shoots him right in the head.
At point blank range.
Oh my God. What
And
a
you can
moment.
it was so good. You can see the gears turning in his head. Like when he's holding that gun, you can see Charles Bronson struggling with that decision, and and you don't think he's going to do it. I feel like we're conditioned by other movies to think he's not going to do it and make the right choice. No, he makes the impulsive bad choice again.
And I think you definitely think that way with this Charles Bronson character because he doesn't act like Death Wish, right?
Hmm.
He's not just going around razzing people to shoot him in the stomach. He's actually just like a real cop.
Yeah, he's not provoking petty thief criminals so that he has an excuse to blow them away with a hand cannon. I mean,
So
you think this Charles Bronson is better than that, but he's not.
he's not. He just wants to protect his daughter. Now, what do you
Mhm.
think? Because the movie ends obviously with that. We know Warren's ultimate fate, but what do you think happens to Charles Bronson at the end? Do you think that they're going to arrest him and try him for murder, or are they going to do like the we're cops, we're brothers kind of thing and just
And
sweep it
cover
under the
him.
rug?
I don't think so. I remember thinking that the police in this movie were a little bit more competent and sort of, I guess honorable in the, the right way to say that. But yeah, I think that he would have been locked up. And honestly, I think at this point in the movie, he regretted the planting the evidence decision he made earlier. I think at this point he has no regrets because his daughter was almost killed by this guy.
Yeah.
I don't think he regrets it. And I think I remember saying in the episode, this should have been a Death Wish prequel
Oh, 100%.
because I think you're right. I think he would have gotten locked up, and I think he would have been stewing in prison. He would have maybe gotten let off for a jury would give him a lesser sentence maybe because of the circumstances, and I think he would be Death Wish when he got out.
Oh man, that would be so good. And this definitely, I think this one really changed our opinion on Charles Bronson because I think we had a string of duds when we were watching these movies, and we were like, "Oh my god, we finally get to back to a Charles Bronson film." And at the beginning, we were groaning, but then it was like, "Oh my god,
It
this
got
was
good.
so good."
Yeah.
Um,
So this actually, we watched this right after Alien Contamination.
oh,
Those were
okay.
those were back to back. So I will fight you on that.
Oh
But
man.
you're right. But before Alien Contamination, it was Lady Shatterley's Lover.
Oh,
Ugh. X-Ray, Hospital Massacre, ugh.
Ugh.
The Apple, ugh.
Yeah, there definitely were
So
some duds leading up to it.
yeah, there were some duds. We were thirsty for Charles Bronson action, and we kind of got it, but in a way that we didn't expect.
Subverted our
It's
expectations.
subvert. We got Ryan Johnson hard on 10 to
Ryan,
Midnight.
fucking Ryan Johnson.
Goddamn Ryan Johnson.
So now I know your favorite quote from the movie was they'll take you out in cuffs, right?
Yep.
It was that
Would
line.
take you out of a gas chamber. Did.
So mine though, and I think it was in like almost the same scene. Charles Bronson comes up, and I'm going to read you the quote how it
Ooh,
reads in IMDb. Uh,
excellent.
so Charles Bronson's talking to Warren, the suspect. Uh, Here's like the action of it,
Mhm.
referring to a masturbatory device found in Warren's apartment. You know what this is for, Warren? It's for jacking off.
I remember that now, and he was touching it with his bare
He
hands.
was.
Ugh.
Oh, so disgusting.
I
So
remember. Oh, it's
disgusting.
because he found the porno mags in there too, right?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, that's right. That's where we first kind of learn about the murderer's sort of like repressed homosexuality that was sort of he was grappling with, and you sort of see like a little glimpse into that part of his psyche in that scene. And then yeah, it's all those that cerebral kind of getting into the mind of a killer, and then we hard cut to hearing Charles Bronson say it's for jacking off.
So great.
Great,
So,
good choice.
so great. Oh, and then also, I would be remiss to not bring up that Wilford Brimley was in this.
Yes. Yes, he was. We
Yeah,
always love to see Wilford Brimley.
as Wilford Brimley, as he should be.
Hmm. Big
But
mustache and
yes,
all.
I love him. Absolutely love him. So that was my number. That was my number 4. That
That
was
was
your
your number.
number
Yep, my number three.
3.
So continue. What was your number three?
So my number 3 is the Godsend. Is it your number 2?
Yes, it is.
Oh my god. That's
I think
insane.
we're already. Yeah. Okay. I'm very interested to see how this lineup ends because we're in sync so far. So yeah, tell us about the Godsend.
So the Godsend, 1980 British horror film, and I think when we first got into it, when we first started talking about the Godsend, the previous episode before it, I don't think what we were really looking forward to it because we got off of The Beast in the Cellar,
Oh, that's
and
yeah, yeah,
and that was a British horror film,
yeah. We
and
were
it
kind of down
was
on it.
shit. It was so bad. It was mom horror, right?
Yeah,
The
I was at
Beast
that.
in
That
the
was that.
Cellar.
That was where you coined the mom horror term, which
Yeah.
cropped up a couple times later. But yeah, you're right. That was really really boring.
Yes. And the Godsend, I think it kind of started off, at least for me, going, what's going on here? This is just going to be more mom horror. And then it turned into something totally different and absolutely awesome.
Yeah, really, really great. I mean, I think I mentioned this probably in our episode, but I'm a sucker also, not only for sci-fi horror, but also kind of that niche demonic horror, like the likes of The Omen and Children of Corn in some ways, and Rosemary's Baby. Like I love all that stuff. And this is another one where I'm amazed that people don't talk about it because it's up there with The Omen for me in
Oh,
terms of
yeah.
a creepy demonic child is laying waste to this family from the inside. It's such a cool concept, and it's executed so well too.
It is. I think the only thing that, at least from my perspective, that I had a downside on it was the dream sequence where he leaves Bonnie out there to drown. And I was like, that should have been the actual ending. It shouldn't have been the dream.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember us talking about how that should have been the ending because he's leaving her on a rock and the high tide is coming in. But I think that's where one of the better quotes in the movie was where he's looking at Bonnie and he knows at that moment, yeah, like he knows what she is and what she's doing.
Yeah.
I,
And
I think he I think he says like I know you, Bonnie. Don't think
I,
I don't know.
yeah. And he's like, he's essentially like, I'm going to leave you there to die.
Yeah, it's
What a moment, right?
a great moment where we're seeing a moment in a dream where a father is realizing that he has to kill his daughter, adopted, albeit, but his daughter nonetheless. And yeah, it's in the I mean, it sounds kind of cheesy when we describe it out of context here, but in the context of the movie, it was really powerful.
It was, and especially because the entire movie, you're just watching kids die, which I think I remember in my notes. And in the podcast, I was like, if kids keep dying at this rate, we get one dead kid every 10 minutes.
Right, because they've got a pretty big family. I mean, they've got an older daughter, a twin boys or like two younger boys, and then
Yeah,
another baby. There were four
yeah.
kids in that family when Bonnie shows up. And I mean, can we talk about a little bit about how Bonnie came into the family? We get that great, I'll call it a cameo by Donald Pleasance's daughter Angela
Yes.
as the kind of creepy pregnant woman who they meet in the field and gets stranded at their house, is behaving very strangely. We see her unplug the phones and basically cut off this family. And she gives birth while she's in the house and then just disappears and leaves the baby with this family. And that is like she's planting this demonic child with the family to sort of raise her. And then as as Bonnie grows up, she's like eating the family from within.
And Alan, the dad in the movie, he even goes like this is like a cuckoo bird, right? Cuckoo birds come in,
Oh
they
yeah,
lay an
at the
egg
end.
in a different nest, and then the
Yep.
baby kills the other babies.
Yep. To get 100% of the mother's attention, basically.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happens in the movie. I think, yeah, I forgot about that because that's a part, I think that's something he mentions at the end, or near the end, because right after that, we get the actual ending of the movie, which I would argue is almost as strong as the one we thought should have been the ending. But we see he's in a park and he's talking to like a doctor or something, right?
Yeah.
And we see he sees out of the corner of his eye across the pond at this park, we see Angela Pleasance again. She looks unaged, identically dressed to how she was in the beginning of the movie, and we see her planting another child with another family. It
It,
was
it
so haunting.
it's definitely a good ending. I will not doubt that.
Yeah.
So, and I think we talked about it in the original episode as well. So Bonnie eventually will grow up to be a woman like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Giving birth and then planting the child into another family. But what is ultimately the idea here? Is it just to ruin some family's life? Or do you think that there was eventually there's going to be, the child, right? Like the
Hmm.
ultimate demonic child that
That's a good
would
point.
be Satan.
I
I would assume that these are,
Yeah.
spawns of Satan.
Yeah, it's not really said, but I think you're right. I think that's I didn't really think about it, but that's actually a really intriguing question. Like, what is the end game? Honestly, I think it's kind of scary either way. Either on one hand, it's what you just said, and there's kind of a grand conspiracy to sort of breed out the mega demonic child, the Antichrist, or something like that, right? Which is terrifying on its own. But on the other hand, there's an equally terrifying possibility that this is just normal reproduction for these mutant demonic people. Like this is just how they live. They're just reproducing normally.
Which how great is that?
Yeah.
Sometimes I think the scariest thing is when there's no reason behind the actions at
Yeah.
all.
There's no grand plan. It's just kind of sick and twisted, but it's just nature kind of being sick and twisted.
Have you ever seen the movie The Strangers?
I think so. That sounds familiar. I don't remember nothing about it
It
though.
doesn't give anything away, but at one point, Liv Tyler's character is talking to the strangers, and she's like, "Why are you doing this to us?" And they reply, "Because you were home. There's no reason.
Oh,
There's no
they're
reason
all
for their actions."
they're all wearing masks, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, I remember that now. I remember that quote. You're right. That's a really good example of kind of it almost being more terrifying that you can't there's no logic in what they're doing. They're just kind of acting on impulse.
They're just doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really great question because I think that that almost deepens my appreciation for this movie a little bit more is that it's almost makes it scarier. Just there's just a kind of a breed of people out there who reproduce this way and yeah, and the idea that Bonnie will eventually become a creepy Angela Pleasance type person who's planting demonic kids with other families.
So great. Uh, my favorite moment. It's a moment from this one. I don't think there's any one quote that
Mhm.
stands out in my mind from it. But my favorite moment is honestly the dream sequence when the dad is just like, "I'm stranding you out here to die."
Bye.
Bye. And I'm just like, God. The movie, uh, we touched upon it multiple times when we were originally discussing it. The husband and wife character, how duped the mom is, and how
Oh
frustrating it
yeah.
has to be for the dad to be like, our daughter, our adopted daughter, is killing our biological kids, and the fact that it, as the viewer, we get frustrated because it's kind of like, how do you not see that? How do you not?
Yeah.
You must be so blinded by love that you
Like
can't
yeah,
see it.
so blinded by that maternal instinct that she's yeah, doesn't realize that she's being duped
Yeah.
basically.
Oh,
Yeah, I that reminds me like speaking of the mom and dad, great performances there, but I remember very distinctly the child actors and actresses in this being really great too, especially Bonnie.
yes. I'm glad you brought that up because usually I hate kids in movies, but all of
Mhm.
these kids were fantastic in it. And the little actress that they got to play Bonnie, she played creepy so well. Because sometimes kids, when
Yeah.
they play creepy, it's kind of like, oh, this is just funny.
Yeah. It's almost like they sometimes they try too hard where they kind of scowl and it's hard to put your finger on, but when it's done well, you definitely notice it. And it's definitely that's the case here with Bonnie.
Yeah, this is definitely, this is one movie that I would like to see get remade. If anything, it'll bring more attention
Bring
back
new
to the
attention.
original, and
Yeah.
maybe we'll get like a proper Blu-ray or something released
Oh,
from it.
how awesome would be, give it the A24 treatment.
Oh yeah.
Kind of those that production company or whatever how you classify them, but they put out all these really great kind of indie slow burn horror movies that are just I feel like yeah, the Godsend would do great under those under the those caring hands.
Who is it?
Awesome with that be.
Ari Leister? He's the one who made like Midsummer and stuff like that.
Ari
Ari
Aster, I
Aster.
think. Yeah,
Let's let's start getting him. Like,
yeah.
Ari, we know you love making moms cry in movies because
Poor
we've
Tony
seen
Collette.
it. Yeah. uh this is the movie for you then. Like, or remake this, do put the
Yeah.
Ari spin on it somehow, and
Oh yeah, yeah.
it 100% needs to get more love. I could eventually see Joe Bob Briggs doing a movie like this.
The
Like,
Godsend on on
yeah,
the last drive-in. I hope so because I would love to learn more about the production.
yeah,
And I think kind of just like a final note for me on this, I think this was the first movie, in our sequence of reviews that this was the first one I could see myself rewatching.
yes.
And actually, as I was doing some notes for this earlier, I actually looked up Blu-rays for it. It's like, oh wow, I would really like to rewatch that. I didn't do that for any of the other movies, even including my number one, but I did that for the Godsend. And there is a Scream Factory release. It came out as like a double feature. It's out of print on their website, but you can find them on eBay, I think. But yeah,
And
I'll definitely be rewatching this.
to anyone listening, we're talking about the 1980 Godsend film, not the Greg Kinnear uh, film that
Ooh,
came out in 2004, which is again about a dead kid. De Niro's in it as well. It's where they clone a couple's dead kid, and it turns out to be evil. We're not talking
really?
about that movie.
I
Don't
had
buy
no
that one.
idea that there was another one out there.
Yep,
Man, they stole that. They're tarnishing the Godsend's good name.
I know. I, I, so that was my number three. That was your number two.
Correct.
So I am walking this one alone. My number two is the 1979 American comedy film Gas Pump Girls. I know it's not a canon film. But
Oh,
I
that
gotta
was your
say,
okay.
this is my number two. Uh
Okay.
what a movie. I again, if it wasn't for the nudity, this is a Sunday afternoon comedy where you put it on and you just kind of watch it and chuckle. It would 100% be one of the ones that I would have expected to see on Comedy Central. Comedy Central,
Mhm.
back when I was younger, was they showed movies every Saturday and Sunday, especially around the afternoon time, and you get movies like Without a Paddle or
Mhm.
um, Office Space, stuff like that.
Oh,
This Gas
yeah.
Pump Girls fits into that in that it's just kind of a goofy, funny, happy-go-lucky film that
Yeah,
has very little, like, I guess, conflict in it, right?
that's a good point. I vaguely remember I didn't put notes down for this one, but I remember being worried that this would be kind of a horrible boner comedy, and it turned out to not really be that. It was kind
Yeah.
of more of a, a group of friends, kind of pull up their bootstraps and want to save the business, right? They have a plan to get the bad guy across the street. Oh, that's right. We had likened this to Good Burger.
Yes, it is Good Burger.
It's the Good Burger plot.
It
the
is.
big the big corporate gas company opens a gas station across the street and puts the gas pump girls place out of business,
Yep.
or tries to anyway. Yeah, it's kind of a yeah, that part of it was definitely, I see what you mean. It's a good kind of like a light comedy movie aside from the occasional bits of nudity, but
The a couple things to note, at least from my perspective. There's another guy named Pee Wee in this, which,
really?
yeah,
Huh.
he's one of the punk guys.
Oh, one of the greaser guys
Yes.
who the bikers who join up with the gas pump girls.
Yes. The greaser guys themselves, the fact that they're called like the vultures and they do like that little vulture shimmy. Uh
When you're a shark.
my wife brought that up because she watched this with me and I forgot what we were
Oh, did
driving by
she?
like a car or something like that. And she's like, the vultures, and she kind of did like the shimmy thing and I was like, what the hell
How did she
is
remember
going
that?
on? It's surprising some of the things that she'll just like remember from a movie, especially one that she probably did not care about.
Yeah, I this is the one of my list where we differ, and I'm remembering more now that you're talking about it. But this was one that didn't pass that filter for me, where I didn't remember anything about it. But that's great that she remembers the
Yes.
the greaser gang name.
And then I just love the absurdity of these kids dressing up as oil sheiks at the end and cops,
Oh God,
and then breaking into
I forgot about
the
that.
oil company. And the guy's like, we've been our profits are at an all-time low. And he has a framed picture of profits being at an all-time high. It's
The
just one of those
little
things where it's
yeah
just kind of like, this is just so much goofy fun. It's just kind of, it was just fun to be a part of and kind of watch these kids do their thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was I think that whole concept is very it does have kind of a kids movie plot structure to it. The whole idea of
Yes.
them, having to band together to take down the like a David versus Goliath almost in kind of a weird way. But I forgot about that infiltration scene.
Yeah.
That was like the one bit of kind of off-color, slightly racist humor that you get a lot more of in other 80s movies that I don't remember being too terrible here.
No, yeah, that was like the only part. And considering there was, I've been trying to watch some of these quote unquote classic comedies from back in the day.
Mhm.
And I recently tried to watch Porky's and I thought it was unwatchable. The fact that Gas Pump Girls was not only enjoyable, but like memorable and it was fun and I had fun watching it. I think that's like, again, we're going to bring up Joe Bob Briggs again.
Of course.
The worst thing a movie can do is be boring, and I was never at one moment so bored with this film,
Yeah.
unlike movies like Sahara, where
Ugh.
I'm sitting there going, fuck, I am wasting my life. And I have
When is
nothing
this gonna
else to
end?
do. Right? Like
Yeah.
literally nothing else to do. But this one I definitely look back extremely fondly.
Yeah, I don't think Come to think of it, I know we sort of gauge our boredom level by us whether or not we check the runtime bar to see how much is left. I don't remember doing that with this one. I think yeah, it was engaging enough, and they kept the plot moving quickly enough, and
Yes.
there were a couple, some of those montages where they're trying to sabotage their gas station. Like it moved quickly enough. I don't remember being bored.
And just the random dance scenes. It's like, hey, we got like 10 minutes to kill. We're gonna dance.
Hey,
Just fun. So w- we're at number, oh, I guess, my favorite moment
oh yeah, what was
from
your favorite moment?
is when they're putting the oil in the car and Sandy Johnson's in the back seat with the guy and they're obviously having sex and he's just like,
Oh
oh, this
yeah.
guy needs the tires rotated. And then eventually the guys are like, oh yeah, he's having sex up there. That's why he's asking for more time.
That's right. And they so because they'd gotten it was like some other customers
Yeah.
convertible, right? And they were kind of knocking boots in the back seat up on the lift, and they kept having to invent new
New
things
things to
to
do.
repair just to give them more time.
Yes.
Uh
And
oh, they're
before we
companies.
move on, the moment we thought the movie was going to be bad was when the main actress had a musical number and she sang at the gas station. Do you remember
Ooh,
that? She's like,
no, I
it's
don't.
it's after the graduation. It's after, I want to say the guy's name was Joe. He had the stroke, and everyone's worried about what's going to happen to the gas station. And she goes there in the middle of the night and she sings.
Ugh, no
And I
wonder I don't remember
remember looking at Jackie because this is one of the few movies that she
that.
watches with me, and I was like, "Oh my god, it's a fucking musical." And then it turned out not to be a musical. So,
Phew. Yeah, that's come to think of it, that's a really strange thing to put in just one song.
yeah, it's even it is more weird that they only did it once instead
Yeah.
of having multiple throughout, as you say, a boner comedy, uh a musical boner comedy. I don't think that's ever been done.
No,
So
and nor should it be.
so now we're up to number one.
I think
Uh
we both know what our number ones are.
I think it's I think so. It's the first movie that we ever reviewed for
It
That's
is
Canon.
it's the first movie,
It's
Joe from
Joe.
1970.
Yeah. What a movie.
Yeah, I think about this movie all the time. And I think this is another one that it's high up on the list for its own merit, but I think it's also high up for me because we are constantly going back and comparing other later movies that we watched to that one. It's
Yes.
become kind of the high watermark that we measure all these other movies against. And I mean, the fact that it's number one says it all. I don't think in terms of pure objective quality that we've exceeded Joe at all. I think that it's been kind of all downhill in a way.
It's I I think it was definitely odd that a movie from 1970 could speak so much to the current issues that are still going on in this world
Hmm.
as Joe did. Not necessarily like we don't have hippies and stuff like that, but a lot of the racism and a lot of the, just these older people not understanding younger people, right?
Right.
And Joe being this this patriarch of a icon in the film where the rich person kind of wants to be like him, but to his peers, Joe's an idiot, right?
Yeah.
But just like the idea that this person, because he's so passionate, that Joe can corrupt and change the idea and change a person into a little Joe. It's
Yep.
kind of interesting, and it kind of speaks to some of the issues
Yeah.
that we have nowadays, where if you scream loud enough and long enough, you're gonna incept someone into thinking the way that you do.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the first note that I had on my little sheet here was that it was surprisingly the messages were surprisingly timeless and they still resonated because for all the reasons you just mentioned, the kind of with racism and class divisions and culture divisions and all of these divisions amongst in the American population that make us kind of conflict with one another. And like you said, it was in this movie, it's sort of the Joe generation very right leaning, and then there's the hippie generation, very left leaning, and they're fighting each other in this movie at a bunch of different points. And I think this was one of the first movies that started a trend in our, or it was the first movie that started a trend that came in with other movies that we watched, where all of the characters were kind of dicks.
Yeah.
There are no redeemable characters. Like everyone's terrible on every side, and it just, yeah, it was yeah, surprisingly resonant with modern issues, I guess.
And I found it interesting when we talked about kind of the behind the scenes stuff for Joe, that Peter Boyle, who plays the titular character Joe, was so repulsed by people's reception of the movie because they saw Joe as the hero and not the villain that he is. And it actually, he like swore off doing these kind of roles again because he essentially goes like, they don't understand
Yeah,
that I'm the bad guy, right? It's like rooting for the Joker in the Joker film, right? You're not
yeah.
supposed to. He's a bad person.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, and you said he's the villain. I mean, I think everyone's kind of a villain. Like you could rewrite this movie to be more from the perspective of the hippies, which they're all kind of, they're not like the sunny flowery hippies that you might think of. They're all kind of drug addicted and kind of
Skeevy.
kind of skeevy, and they're robbing people and they're kind of duping people, and like they've got their own issues and their own kind of demons that they're grappling with, and they're just, they're kind of just as contemptible in some ways as Joe. I think, yeah, the fact that there's the way that the fact that it ends the way that it does is makes it all the more surprising that people were rooting for Joe, because they kill that entire house worth of people,
They do.
right?
What a moment too. What a way to end the film, because
Right.
you get to that moment where Joe and I forget the other guy, right? They're driving up to the
The rich guy,
house,
yeah.
the rich guy. They're driving up to the hippie house because they got grifted. They got their money stolen when they went to the Easter orgy.
Oh God, the orgy.
The
Oh,
orgy.
Joe.
Uh and so they're going out for vengeance, and Joe is just having a hoot, killing all of these people. And the rich guy is very timid. He hasn't shot anyone yet.
Hmm.
And then it gets to that end where it's the girl, she's running away, and it does the freeze frame effect, right? And you hear Susan Sarandon, she says a quote that she said earlier in the film, and it's something like, "You wouldn't hurt me, would you, Dad?" And it's the
Oh
dad who
yeah.
shoots her in the back and kills her.
That's right. Because yeah, they're killing all the hippies in the house, and he sees one escape out the front door, and Joe's like egging him on, like, get her, she's gonna get away. And he
Yeah.
shoots her with a rifle, and then you don't notice until you see that other angle, and it freeze frames, and you realize it's his daughter, the Susan
Yeah.
Sarandon character. Yeah, that's such a great ending.
So powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially because like you're watching the film and you're kind of, I guess, because you're spending so much time with the rich person, which was, I think, was really shocking that it took like 30 minutes for Joe to show up in his own movie, because you have that
Hmm.
whole setup in the beginning with Susan Sarandon and her drug addicted boyfriend, and you follow her story for a little bit until you meet her parents, which is the rich dad, and
Right.
then their story brings you to the bar where you finally meet the loudmouthed Joe. And
And
he's like super racist. The bartender's like, "Hey, here's 5 cents. Go put something on the jukebox and just shut up."
yeah,
Right?
we, I forget. Yeah, he's like, we see the rich dad walk by the bar, and you just start to hear Joe's voice kind of fade in,
Yeah.
and Joe is just like drowning everyone in this bar with his nonsense, and everyone just wishes he would shut up. I forgot
Yep.
about the jukebox thing though. That's
It's
great.
such a good way to get you to Joe, because you don't want to meet him first, right? You got to see him for the loudmouth idiot that he is. And you have to understand the situation where Susan Sarandon's coming from. She's a drug addict, but her parents are rich. She shouldn't be in this situation. And then you get to see Joe where he talks bad about hippies like Susan Sarandon. And you're kind of going like, I can kind of see where you're coming from, Joe, but how you go about dealing with this is totally wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right. That they introduce him in a way that makes the audience it kind of forces you to sympathize with him a little bit as you go on, because it starts out really shocking and offensive, but you spend so much time with him and the rich dad later on. They sort of humanize Joe a little bit when you see his kind of home life, and he talks about his kids who are sort of estranged, and then by the end, I mean, I can see why some audiences would root for him. And I think the fact that that happened, the movie manipulates you in a good way through good writing into sympathizing with him, so that when he starts murdering people, you realize like, wait, what is he doing?
Exactly. Because there's that moment where we see Joe at work, and I remember we thought it was like popsicle sticks,
Yeah,
but essentially he's just watching popsicle sticks get manufactured, and you're like, what a fucking loser
yeah,
job.
he's got
And
a
then
horrible life.
you see later on in the film, he's talking to the rich guy about salaries. And, we calculated out that even Joe, what he's making right now, what he assumes is a good salary is pennies in real life. Like his view of his own life is askew, where he thinks that
Right, yeah,
he is living a really good life, and then he looks at the rich guy who's living this amazing life, when in reality Joe is damn poor, and that
yes,
guy is insanely rich.
yeah, because we see his house, or it's kind of like a penthouse apartment or something, isn't it?
Yeah,
And he goes out to the suburbs and to Queens or something, and where Joe lives, and it's comparatively, there is no comparison. It's Joe lives in a shithole by comparison. It's
exactly. Oh
yeah,
man.
I think
Yeah.
I mean, again, I think this was objectively the best movie, best in terms of quality of writing and editing and lighting. It was just very well made. Um, and I think, yeah, definitely the writing call outs there, because like we've said a couple times already, the messaging resonates still today. And I think that's kind of a special thing that, at times in the movie where it seems very dated, like when you know, the TVs are so old and the beer cans have like those pull off tabs,
Yes.
things that like a movie that can feel so dated, but at the same time still have like a resonant message with the audience. I think that's really special.
Yeah.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't this actually get some recognition in terms of awards
Oh
or
yeah.
good reviews?
So it definitely got really good reviews. It's 82% right now on Rotten Tomatoes, but it really good reviews. It was a budget of $106,000, and it made over $26 million.
Wow, yeah.
Norman Wexler, who wrote the screenplay, received an Oscar nomination for Best Original Screenplay.
Okay, yeah. I thought I remembered some kind of award, either an actual award or a nod, but that's awesome. Yeah, and definitely well earned.
And then yeah, obviously starred Peter Boyle. It was Susan Sarandon's first film role, and the director John G. Alvidson would go on to make or to direct films like Rocky, The Karate Kid. So he did some good movies later on in his career.
Yeah.
His career was spotty at best, we'll say, but he did go on to make some very notable movies in his career. Then obviously Peter Boyle was, I mean, he was huge, right?
Hmm.
Young Frankenstein, Everybody Loves Raymond. He spanned so many different generations, which very few actors ever do.
Yeah, I think just across the board, we just described, I think there was a lot of talent in this movie, either in front of or behind the camera, and it came out later. And I think, again, correct me if I'm wrong, this was before the canon changeover to the two brothers from Israel, right?
That is correct. This
Okay.
is that pre canon era. This is a David Gill production from the 1970s. But so Canon operated from 1967 to 1994. So we had the 70s where, yeah, uh, Golan and Glavis didn't really, I don't know if I'm saying that guy's name, uh, where they don't own Canon. And then there's a pre-Canon era where they made, like the lemon popsicle stuff.
Right.
And then the Godsend was the first
Under the
actual
new management,
factual
yeah.
Canon production, Canon Group Incorporated. Um, yeah.
So I think that's definitely another piece of evidence to the fact that it doesn't canon as we know it in the kind of cult movie popular culture sense. We don't see that. We're sort of seeing the transformation as we go through this catalog, where we start with Joe and the Gods into movies like that, which are legitimately good, and the yeah, they're legitimately good, and I think they don't fall into that sort of formula that some of the later movies do, where it's just sort of like they're exploiting a specific trend or popular thing, which I think comes into play more I think will come into play more as we go on through the catalog and we get into some of the later 80s years.
And I think it's because they made a movie like Joe that was so monumental and so big. And then when they try to recapture that lightning in the bottle, it fell so flat. Like Lady Shatterley's Lover, Sahara, these moments
Yeah,
where they're like, this is going to be epic and it's going to be huge and it's going to be what Joe brought us. And it just didn't. And then, you can't fault them for trying and you can't fault them for
true.
going, we can't get that. Let's just stick with the easy stuff.
Yep, stick with our formula. What's Charles Bronson up to? Get him in here for Death Wish 10.
Exactly. 10 to midnight 2, half
Yeah.
past 10. Like yeah, someone has to make those kind of movies, and I'm glad that those movies exist because there's something to be said about having a movie night or a moment of watching movies where you just turn your brain off and you watch the stupid picture in front of you and you just have a great time doing it.
You watch the explosions happen. You watch
Yeah.
Charles Bronson gun down guys from across the street. It's kind of it's a different kind of enjoyment than Joe. Joe is sort of I this word sounds cringy as it comes out of my mouth, but it's a more intellectually satisfying kind of movie, whereas things like Enter the Ninja are satisfying in a much different way.
Oh, yeah,
Different appetites.
I would say it was only cringy if you were like, "Oh, we live in a society," or you
We
said
live in a
something like that.
society.
But no, you're 100% right. There's two different kinds of movies, right? There's going to be the fun one, like Gas Pump Girls and 10 to Midnight and all those, and then you have those ones that make you think that stick with you for a different reason.
Right.
And Joe is the pinnacle as of as of right now, the pinnacle of everything that Canon has ever done.
Yeah, that was going to be my kind of like one of my wrap up questions that I wanted to ask you was, do you think that we will see anything of the Joe caliber as we go through the rest of the catalog?
Now, again, we're going to say, do we think that there's a movie that's going to make me think as much as Joe does?
Yeah.
100% no. Do I think that there's going to be a
Okay.
movie that's better than Joe? 100% yes. I think if we make it another, and I don't see why we would never not make it, but we make it another 25 movies,
Hmm.
I could. Ooh. All right. I'll
You can
say
make a
it.
bold prediction here.
I will 100% say with 70% certainty
You 100% say with 70% certainty. Got
that
it.
Joe will not be my number one in the next 25.
Okay.
And that's not to say that Joe in any way is faulted. I think there's going to be in the next 25 movies one that I watch that I go gaga for, knowing that is fundamentally a worse movie, but I had so much fun watching
Yeah.
it that I enjoy it more than Joe.
I can get behind you on that. I think in terms of pure quality, like the ones that the movie that makes you think and really resonates with you from a writing perspective, I don't think we're going to top Joe. But I think if you look at it the way that you just described, where it's entertaining for whatever reason, you just had a good time watching it. I think there are some movies in the catalog still that will give Joe a run for its money.
100%. It's been a great 25 movies, ups and downs, everything in between.
Mm-hmm.
I have watched 25 movies that I never would have watched ever. Maybe
Yeah,
Gas Pump Girls, because Joe Bob Briggs talks about it all the time, but there's no way I would have ever found The Godsend.
and that was you. That's a great segue to the other question that I wanted to ask you was, do you think any of these movies would have been on your radar if we had not done this podcast?
Gas Pump Girls, I think, is the
Yeah.
only thing on my radar, right?
Mm-hmm. I
Just because of Joe Bob Briggs, but everything else, I can 100% say, besides like Death Wish, right? But I don't think I ever would have been spurred to sit down and watch Death Wish 2 and
yeah,
beyond.
I think
Uh,
the
yeah.
were those the only two for you?
Yeah, I think those are the only two. What about you?
Yeah, I think the Death Wish ones were probably those probably would have been on my radar. I probably would have watched those eventually. The only other ones that I can really think of that I would have known or thought to watch um were I need some of the slashers because kind of have a little bit of a soft spot. I just recently watched through all of the Friday the 13th movies. I like that genre. So I probably would have watched things like New Year's Evil or Hospital Massacre eventually, but it wouldn't have they weren't things that I would seek out specifically. They would be things that I would find while searching for, 80s horror movies, right?
I gotta
Uh,
say, with 100% honesty, that if I ever saw any of those movies being offered to me outside of this, I would have passed them. I would have passed right by them and never looked back.
yeah, I would have to be in a mood to see something of the 80s slasher genre, and B, something that I hadn't seen before, because occasionally I will do that. I'll go looking for kind of rough movies from the same era or genre, and I'll give them a watch. I This is like a very loose thing though. It's just as probable that I would have passed over New Year's Evil like you would.
Yeah.
But even then, taking like so all of those the Death Wish movies and a couple of those slashers, that's maybe 10% at best of the catalog of all the movies that we watched so far. So really most of these would be things that I never would, yeah, I would easily just pass on.
I don't think I could see you as a Lady Shatterley's lover kind
No.
of guy, right?
No, 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 no.
And if the cover of Dr. Heckle and Mr. Hype alone would have turned me off from
Oh
ever
yeah.
watching it, right?
I think for both of us, that was we haven't used our vetoes so far, which I think is something notable to mention. But of all the movies that we've watched so far, I think we were both most likely to use that veto there.
If the podcast was going to die, it would have been that episode, right?
Yes.
That uh, that 100% was one of the moments where I got done watching it and I was like, "Oh my god, Greg's not going to watch this. He's going to get partway through this and be like, I'm not fucking doing this anymore."
It's going to be a hard DNF. But
Um,
look where we ended up. That was about on both of our honorable mentions lists, and we talk about it all the time.
yeah,
We're still talking about it.
we yeah, we are. Yeah.
So,
What in your opinion was the worst movie that we watched? And it doesn't have to be
uh,
because like movies like Lady Shatterley's Lover and Sahara are well-made movies. We hated every moment of it, right? I'm not saying
yeah,
like what's the worst made movie. What
technically, we're. I
because
honestly,
technically worse would probably be that horror movie in the in
the Beast in the Cellar.
no, not the Beast in the Cellar. What's the other one? It was like ultra low budget VHS rip. Um
Hercules.
okay, you know what? Hercules probably would be one of the worst one. No, it was Savage Weekend.
Savage Weekend, right? I Yeah, I think it if I had to pick the worst, I think I would have to actually go Beast in the Cellar because I think if I'm thinking about it in terms of enjoyment factor for any reason, I hated the Beast in the Cellar experience 100% because I probably checked the timeline more that in that movie than any other. And that's probably where I got the closest to turning it off, more so than Dr. Heckle and Mr. Hype, because there were
Wow.
just those long stretches of the
Nothing.
two women just talking and bickering and not really doing or saying anything of substance. I was just plain bored through most of that movie.
And the
Yeah, I think
sniping and the
reminiscing.
I'm afraid of
I'm
thunderstorms.
afraid of thunder. It just nothing happened. It was boring, and yeah, I mean, if I'm in a corner here and I got to pick, it's got to be Beast in the Cellar. Maybe if I
Nice.
spent more time thinking about it, I'd come with one of the other ones, but that's my gut feeling. Just
I
boring.
I think it would either be Beast in the Cellar because of just how ungodly boring the film was, or I'd
Hmm.
have to go Savage Weekend just because of how insane the plot was at times, right? How they tried to make you think like, oh, it's going to be this killer, it's going to be that killer. They had
Yeah, all the red
the
herrings.
they had the dumb, obviously like there was something mentally wrong with the guy, adult throughout the entire film that really didn't end up doing anything.
The kind of hillbilly guy
Yeah.
who they wanted us to believe was the killer.
The only saving grace of the movie was the table saw kill at the end.
Yeah.
That's probably why it's not the worst film. But that is a damn close second.
I'm surprised to actually hear you hate that movie as much. I it's not anywhere near the top for me, but I think that's kind of a more of the middle of the pack movie for me.
Uh,
I remember liking that character Nikki, the really flamboyant character who has some funny
Yes,
lines
Mickey,
and is kind of a badass.
Mickey,
Um,
who dressed up in drag and had the red feather boa.
yeah,
Yeah, he's
it's
like
kind of it's an interesting character. And the who's the guy from Reanimator who's in that?
it was the doctor, not Dr. Herbert West, but the older one.
The one of the bad guys that
Yeah.
who has does scary things when he's just ahead.
Yes.
Um,
Oh, that's putting it lightly.
yes,
But yeah, I because movies like Sahara and Lady Chatterley's Lover, because it's so technically well
yeah.
made.
Lady Shadowley's Lover definitely has. It wasn't our cup of tea for sure, but it was
Yes.
not badly made. And it wasn't really badly written. I think like we always understood what was going on, and everyone's motivations were kind of clear. I think the fact that it was based on a novel, right, probably helped.
Yes.
So
I think we're shitting on that movie just because it's not our
yeah,
jam.
it's not our genre, but I mean, if you like romances and kind of dramas, period pieces, check that movie out. It's probably something you're going to enjoy because I remember the costumes being pretty good and some of the settings and the scenes in that big manor house are pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's things to appreciate there. It's just yeah, like we said, not really our jam.
Oh man, it's been a fun 25. I'm looking forward to
Yes.
the next 25. And the only way I feel. Wait, do you have anything else
No,
or
I think
segue
that's
us?
well, actually, no, I take that back. I want to give some props to my final honorable mention,
Okay.
which is Mako Jaws of Death.
Oh, Animal Cruelty the movie.
Animal Cruelty the movie. And I put that in honorable mentions for two reasons. One, it's another one that we compare back to semi regularly. Mostly when we see animal cruelty in other movies, we think of Mako Jaws of Death, of course. But it gives us, it gives the world the quote of not of the week, but of all the movies that we've watched so far. It gives me my favorite quote. And that is the part in the movie where Sonny Stein, our quote unquote hero, realizes that Karen and the bar owner are exploiting the shark that he rented to them for kind of a horrible, table show. And we see the shark being tortured with this electric device. And Sonny Stein, runs out in a huff after kind of beating up on the bar owner. And Karen, the woman he's been kind of talking with, chases him out And when as he's driving off into the sunset, saying that he's going to come back, he's not going to trust anyone anymore, she says, "Go ahead, get out of here, you shark lover."
Nice.
Oh,
What what a moment.
I love that moment. I love that quote. I of all the quotes of the week that we've done so far, that's the one that I say the most. I still say that all the time to my poor wife, who probably has no idea what I'm talking about. It it's
Becky's
just
like, I
so
don't really like
nonsensical.
sharks.
It's a great quote because it's funny even out of context. The idea that someone is a shark lover, like get out of here, you shark lover. The idea of you being pissed at someone for liking sharks, I'd argue it's funnier out of context than in the context of the movie. And yeah, I think the pure fact that it was just so memorable, and I still say it today, that is the quote of the era, the season,
We'll say era.
the era. Yeah, sure. The pre-canon to early canon era that we've seen so far.
Oh man, I just remember that the bad guy in that movie, he was so fat, and he wore that chalice necklace.
And he would always have his shirt off. We got
Yes.
so many different shirtless scenes with that guy.
Oh,
I remember him having that kind of greasy bratwurst skin. Remember that?
he did. I remember editing that one and being like, "Oh my god, we sound awful," because he kept referring to him as having sausage skin.
People listening to this, before you judge us too harshly, go watch Mako Jaws of Death. Find it however way you can, watch it whatever way you can, but tell us we're wrong. That guy absolutely has the greasy sheen of a freshly cooked sausage.
Like an Oliver Reed. Oh man. Well,
Yes.
Greg, it's time to charge right back in to watching some movies.
Back in the muck.
And I think the only way that we can get the terminal velocity needed is by being shot out of a cannon like a
Yes.
cannonball. We're gonna exercise and similar movies right here, because the last one that we watched, Sahara, which was supposed to be about a car race, but ended up being about the Merovingian. We're gonna watch the Cannonball Run, the 1981 action comedy Burt Reynolds film. This
Yay.
movie is star-studded. Greg, are you ready to hear about some of the people in this movie?
No.
No. You want to just be surprised by the people that
Yes.
you see?
Yes.
Spoilers. Burt Reynolds is in this movie.
Mustache and all?
So, yes. Glorious mustache. I think this was definitely one of the movies that when we saw the speaking engagement with Burt Reynolds, or with Burt Reynolds, with
Joe Bob.
Joe Bob Briggs, he brought up the Cannonball Run,
Yeah.
and the Gumball Rally. It's very similar films, but the Cannonball Run is going to be the next one that we watch.
I can't wait. I think that'll be a good kind of palate cleanse from the whole previous 25. We're doing this retrospective. We're kind of, cleaning our heads a little bit, sorting out our thoughts, and we're gonna ease in with a movie that we've probably all heard of. I may not have watched, but yeah, I'm definitely excited.
Because after the Cannonball Run, we're going to break it down into
Uh-oh.
Breakin'.
The not Breakin' 2, Electric Boogaloo. We got to go to the beginning.
Breakin'. See how it all started. And I will say, looking at some of the movies that we have coming up, we are definitely entering that canon era. Within the next 25, won't say at what point we're going to watch these movies, but within the next 25, we will have our first Chuck Norris film.
Yes.
We're going to return back to the Ninja series.
Yes.
We're going to have a Terminator ripoff.
Yes.
So we definitely have a lot of things in a movie I've never heard of, and I'm assuming it's going to be in the Breakin' vein. It's called Rappin'.
Oh no.
And boy, oh boy, based off the title alone, I am so excited to watch this one.
You're right. I think we are entering the canon golden age.
Yes. So we have a lot more to go because we have a lot of pandemic left. And
Yeah, that we do.
honestly, I think what I definitely look forward every Sunday, despite the quality of movie, sitting down and talking to you about this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this, as we said a couple times, and I know we said it in the first episode, this definitely scratches that itch that we have, and I'm sure a lot of other people do too, of going to the movies and watching something that you maybe not would have seen before, and then talking about it and kind of breaking it down. I think, as bad as all these movies were, like you said, it's always fun to discuss them and pick them apart and really kind of get in the nitty gritty and maybe appreciate them a little bit more than we would have otherwise. So yeah,
Yeah.
very, very much excited for the next 25.
Well, if you like what you're hearing, go ahead and send us some messages. You can write to us at that's canon. That's canon, CANNON at gmail.com. You can also follow us on YouTube at That's Canon. And I just want to again thank you, the listeners, for giving us a chance. And hopefully during this pandemic, we've brought something a little light, something a little fun, maybe a little frustrating to your lives,
These guys won't
right?
shut up.
I know they keep on saying to watch bad movies. But yeah, I mean, really, that's what we're here for. We're all missing something in our lives. Greg and I are missing that
Movie
uh,
camaraderie.
movie camaraderie that we would have got otherwise have gotten going to the Alamo Draft House and stuff. So
This podcast has been paid for by Alamo Drafthouse.
free tickets, please.
Tickets, please.
And remember, since we said it,
That's canon.